And call the order then. Welcome, everybody. This is the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force Index Subcommittee. It's 2:30 p.m. on December 5th, 2024. So as we start, I'd like to start with our land acknowledgement. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Spanish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. So, having welcomed all, Jill, would you let us know if we do get a quorum as time goes on?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. So the items on our meeting agenda today, there's only one that really requires a quorum. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. And the first item is to bring back for information the mission statement that we created at our last meeting 2 months ago. I want you to be aware that it went to steering committee and another bullet got added. So you have it in your packet and hopefully you've all seen it. The added bullet was specifically at the request of the exec. Satpal really wanted us to be more proactive, and he requested that we take action, which led to the bullet of making recommendations to assure the collection of consistent data with uniform definitions across all agencies and departments of Whatcom County and entities contracted by the county to provide services to justice system involved individuals. So I want you to be aware that although you weren't able to re-vote on it, we went ahead and added it, and it was adopted by the IPRTF, and it's actually out on our website. So that was the informational item. The next item on our agenda is a result of that. If those of you who have looked in your packet will see that it's a proposed motion related to the request from Satpal. So I'm going to hold off on that, hoping that before the end of the meeting, we have a quorum.
We do have a quorum.
We do. All
Just
right,
a quorum, yes.
So I don't know how many people have had a chance to look in their packet to see this proposed motion. I'm happy to read it if that would be helpful. So why don't I go ahead and read it, and then I'm not actually sure if the chair can make a motion or if I need to ask one of you. Oh, thank you, Jill. So this is modified. The index subcommittee of the IPRTF moves really to recommend to the IPRTF, to be consistent in procedure, that Whatcom County develop data sharing agreements with all agencies and departments of Whatcom County and with entities that are now or in the future are contracted by the county to provide services to justice system involved individuals. These agreements are for the purpose of assuring uniform data definitions, data accessibility, and transparency for use in the Justice Project implementation plan. So if anyone is comfortable moving that at this point, and we have a second, we can discuss it. Otherwise, I can give you a little more background now. Maya?
Well, I just wanted, I'm not ready to move.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
I guess like the public defender's office is a department in the county, and I
Right.
kind of loath to agree to data sharing.
Exactly.
I
So
don't know
the
about-
reason for this is because if we were to look ahead where we're going to end up, if we are able to use data in the way we want to for the JPOP and the IPRTF to look at whether or not our various programs have been successful within the implementation plan. And if we're ever to put together the public dashboard that's been a priority, we will have to have these. And I've talked at some length to the health department. They already have these, and they're very specific related to the exact data that's being.
They have them for Julata with certain agencies, or I
Well,
don't know.
what
I mean, we don't have an agreement with the health department. I guess
I maybe need to defer then. The health department kind of led me to believe that they do for things like the LEAP program and the LEAD program. I know that they share data back and forth. And in order to do that, they have somewhere a written agreement about that.
yeah.
So I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but what led to this, and I'm glad we're having a discussion about it, is that I think there's some energy and a request from the executive committee for the IPR of the county, for the IPRTF to make a recommendation to this regard. It's been discussed at this committee before that ultimately these kinds of agreements will have to be done. And the idea is, let's ask the county to get started on them now, so we're not delayed in the future. The health department, I talked to both Melora and then I talked to the head of their data department, and both of them offered templates. We would not be doing this. We would simply be recommending to the county that the process start. So I'm going to be quiet and let those of you with more experience with this weigh in.
Could I just, a question I have, Bertie, too, is if this motion moves forward, we're saying, Index is saying to IPRTF that IPRTF advise county council to, or advise the county to develop data sharing agreements
Right,
across departments.
right.
And in that process of developing a data agreement, wouldn't the public defender's office get to then indicate what they are comfortable sharing and what
Oh,
level of
totally.
data is shared and things like
Totally.
that? So this isn't saying like everybody's going to share everything they have. This is can you start the process of establishing appropriate agreements so that, and one thing I'll say too is that in my listening over the years, this has often brought up as the biggest barrier for why we don't have data, is that there isn't interoperability of systems and that we don't have agreements in place. So just underlining, Bertie, what I heard you say about this as a proactive motion, anticipating that those agreements can take time, and it's kind of the like walking and chewing gum at the same time moment.
Exactly. I mean, they are very specific to each department. So I can appreciate Maya, your concerns, and that one of the reasons for the motion is it will be quite a time-consuming, long process for each department to come to agreement on what's needed. So the concern is if we don't start, we won't get there.
Do we have does someone here know, is there hired a person who works for the county to do this kind of work? Okay.
As far as I know, not. the county would have to deal with that, obviously. It wouldn't be us. It would end up in attorneys' offices. I mean, the county attorney would be intimately involved, and we all know how time-consuming that can be. Perry, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
It's a chicken and egg kind of a thing here,
Mhm.
because once we know what the data is needed, that's when you can really do a data sharing agreement.
Got
So
it.
maybe what we do is we start with a letter of intent. Our intent is to share, and once we have more specificity in the data needed, we will actually enter into a real data sharing agreement where we are specifying what we're able to share.
Mhm.
I mean,
Other
we
comments?
do letters of intent all the time, but that might be a quick start. I mean, a data sharing contractual type of thing would take more effort, but at least we could, maybe that would be the baby step towards a,
Mhm.
and again, we have to know we don't really know what
Right,
data
you need to
is. I
know
mean,
all the specifics.
there's some data that the public defender will not share, or the jail will not share, or the prosecutor will not share, but a lot of it they will share.
So if people feel that this is premature, it can die. We can table it for the future at a point where we feel we have more information, or somebody could move to begin, as Perry suggested, with letters of intent. Peter.
I just want to say, I'm glad that you put this forward, because until we have begin having these conversations, we're never going to get anywhere. So if it's a letter of intent, and you want to bring it back to us next time, or I'm not sure how a letter of intent in this sort of bureaucracy would work, but I'm all ears and would love to hear what y'all think would be the best way to move things forward at a pace that is maybe just a little bit uncomfortable, but could move things forward. And I'm interested in your thoughts. Is the letter of intent way to go? Maya, I'm all ears. I'd love to hear what
I don't know
your
what,
thoughts
I don't
are.
exactly know what a
Yeah.
letter of intent is, but if
Mhm.
that, I kind of would defer to Perry if that seems like
Mhm.
step one before you get into a data agreement.
It's a
Sure.
non-binding
Yeah,
arrangement.
that seems, I've not seen one. I don't know what they look like. I don't know what it entails, but I'm open. I like the idea of moving forward on something, but yeah.
I mean,
Maybe.
we could do a single letter of intent, and then we could have each agency, a signature block for each agency. And it's gonna maybe be more than one page. I mean, we have municipal courts, we have county agencies, we have city, tribal.
And we have then the contracted ones, like behavioral health type ones. And I know that's going to be a big discussion because they're usually, I don't know if they're more reticent than other agencies, but they certainly have a number of concerns. It just seems like,
But if I could make, so in my travels around the county agencies, whether it be sheriff corrections, the courts, I mean, people are all very, very willing to share. I really
Right.
haven't encountered,
right,
especially for this effort. I mean, people want to share. So
Mhm.
I think this is just a reinforcement and then actually getting to the details of what that sharing might look like.
Mhm. Mhm.
We certainly would want to do this in such a way that it didn't waste a whole lot of time, but rather started the conversation, I would think. don't want to start some big process that is going to take forever before we can even have the conversation. So
Mhm.
definitely looking to you, Perry, and others who are within the system to suggest to Bertie and all of us a way forward so that we can, do it without wasting a whole lot of time, so we can get to the conversation, so we can actually begin to share data. So
Another approach would be to table this for the moment, listen to the other items on the agenda. And one of the items, following Peter's report, is for us as a subcommittee to develop our priorities for the coming year. And that might inform where this would fit in the work that we think we need to be doing. So how do people feel about just doing, and we can come back to it at the end of the meeting, and it may be that it's an idea that's premature, and I have no trouble with that.
it's fine with me.
All right.
Good.
Why don't we then call on Peter to report how many of you, I know Peter brought this up at the previous meeting. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to look or find out anything more about Measures for Justice. For those of you who have or have not, Peter has been going forward with it, and we had a phone meeting with Measures for Justice, which I've asked him to report out here. That was attended by, well, I'll let you tell, Peter. I won't steal your thunder. So let's
sure.
turn over to Peter here.
Yeah. Well, first of all, who here was able to look at Measures for Justice? Okay.
Good.
Great. Okay. So as you likely know, Measures for Justice is a nonpartisan nonprofit, fairly large, well-funded, and it is putting together a standard for criminal justice data that they hope to inspire all jurisdictions, all counties across the country to adopt. They have a product called Commons, which is basically a data dashboard that, like the one that we are that we have been bringing about, we've been talking about for years and want to bring about as part of our implementation plan. The Commons is you're able to, once you have your data in order, you are then able to make policy related measures to metrics that you are able to follow, and it helps policymakers make decisions around using criminal justice data. And it's quite impressive what they've got going, and we got on the phone with them, and we were able to talk to one of their data scientists about actually, I'm not sure she was a data scientist. Well, she was a data scientist, but she had a great deal of experience in behavioral health. And I was particularly interested in hearing her talk through with us how we might be able to use Measures for Justice system in determining how our diversion programs are affecting our criminal justice system as a whole. And so it was very interesting. I thought that we had asked some good questions. We got a lot of good feedback. I know Dean, Heather, and Bertie were there, and I would be very interested in hearing their thoughts. One thing I want to say is that it's pretty clear that Measures for Justice it's an excellent system for criminal justice work, but is not necessarily set up for some of the more population health related measures that we're also interested in. So money aside, resources aside, time aside, etc. And we may be looking at two different systems that would cover our needs. Dean and Bertie and Heather, would you like to follow on and talk about your thoughts on what you've heard?
I'm deferring to Heather, but she's off screen, probably tending to the more important.
Well, Dean, why don't you go ahead?
Right. Go ahead, Dean.
Well, you know, the notion of thinking of, two different systems, perhaps, I think is what stands out in my mind. It seemed to me that Measures for Justice and the sort of the Justice Counts initiative, which apparently is related, are interested in really developing data that allow for the measurement of the flow of cases through the criminal justice system in a way that makes the process more efficient and identifies, for example, as a policy decision, when there are bottlenecks that might be improved upon with added resources, for example. A related system, which you allude to, Peter, is when there are diversion from the criminal justice system, when there are programs designed to divert at various intercept points in the process, then we need a system and a way of measuring the both the flow of cases into those diversions as well as their impact, which moves more toward the program level data around effectiveness and population level data around the impact on the larger community. And so I think for me, that's sort of the overall frame of the discussion. And I do recall some comments at another meeting of one of the subcommittees of the IPRTF, in which I think was Raylene was describing some of the current bottlenecks in the system that, I think cry out for resources to help move cases more efficiently through the system and in a way that is appropriate to, the needs of the community and the needs of those who are involved.
Heather, are you still there or are you? Okay, so I would agree. I don't know that I have a lot to add. My comments really are over the year that I've been involved in the index committee, it does feel a bit chicken and egg, as you said, Perry, where we all agree there needs to be decisions about what data we're going to use and what data points are commonly agreed upon. And that is sort of the start for a whole lot of different things. And I don't know that that is something that is going to be generated by the folks on this committee or that we're looking at or by JPOP. I think there seems to be and I may be overstating again, so please chime in, but it feels like there's sort of a consensus that at some point we're going to look outside of Whatcom County to get help with what is these data points that are going to be the most important and the most useful. So one of the attractions of Measures for Justice is that's exactly where their expertise is and what they have learned. They have done statewide studies in New York and in California on the state, to misuse the word, but on the situation of statewide justice information, and found, as you would expect, that it's all over the board and not very useful. And so they have set out to create systems that remedy that. So I would say that probably sums up its potential role. Anyone who was there have anything else to add? Yeah, Perry.
I mean, I like the idea of using commercial off-the-shelf software that's ready to go, and it'll actually define the data for us. So we don't have to get high-centered on this data or that data. It's what others have used.
Mhm.
This one seemed a little prosecutor-centric to me when I kind of looked at, who was using it and things like that. But
Mhm.
otherwise, I think it's a great, it's a template that we could start with. It may not meet all of our needs, but
Right.
people are just hungry for a
Mhm.
template, and this is a template that's just not showing the data. It's also a template that can help measure the changes that occur with the changing data
Mhm.
over time. I mean, it's going to be an iterative process, and if we can start with again, a commercial off-the-shelf, already built solution,
Mhm.
maybe, we're not going to have all the measurements and everything at once, but at least we can have a robust starting point.
Mhm.
Perry, I was in a meeting yesterday where Erica Lautenbach said that Measures for Justice was expensive. And that really struck me, that the idea that I can't remember what the figure is, let's call it $250,000. That's expensive. It seems to me that what would likely be more expensive would be to recreate a system like that ourselves. And I could well imagine that $250,000 over several years would be a very small part of what it would cost for us to recreate this whole system ourselves. Do you have any
Aren't they
thoughts?
a nonprofit? I thought they were a nonprofit.
They are.
They are a nonprofit. There's a whole process around,
Yeah,
there's a whole
but
process
maybe,
around moving through this and collecting the data, making sure that, and they do a lot of the work to make sure all those connections work and that your data system is clean and the data sharing that we're talking about happens. I think that that's all part of it.
well, maybe they have a starter kit. Maybe you don't go big with a $250,000 effort at first. You do a demo, you do a pilot, you
Yeah, the
kinda get
first
started.
part cost $19,000, as I recall, and that's how you kick off the project. It's not like you write a $250,000 check.
It's also, what I was struck with is they have an entire process of engaging the players and making the decision to use them or not use them in the first place. So it's not like you study it online, have a couple of phone conversations, and then write a check and you're off and running. They really come to the community and engage the various players in the process prior to making the decision. So
Hmm.
I think it's important to understand that if we decided it was something worth investigating, it would be a whole series of ongoing meetings and interactions before,
Maybe we can test drive the tool,
yeah.
not the process.
I see
Dean.
Dean's hand up. Bertie, are you able to see people's hands
Yeah, I
up?
can. I was just
Okay.
getting ready to call on him. Thank you, Dean.
Sure. My recollection is that the $250,000 figure was the Measures for Justice folks' response to a question you had, Peter, about what would it cost to do a kind of a project where we're really engaging you to develop a system for us. And their response was, well, in Monroe County, New York, we have a contract that's $250,000, $250,000. And my sense was that that's not a purchase of software or a license of software. It is a consulting agreement. It's not clear to me that they are actually directly themselves vendors of a software product. My guess is they probably use, one or many standard packages that are out there in the world that they've, designed to be a base for defining and collecting data that a justice system would need. And I should just mention that as of today, there is finally a sign off by finance of the Village Reach contract, and the contract is in the executive's office for signature and then going to the vendor so I can start talking to them about getting a schedule of activities going. It's not to say that that replaces in any way the kind of idea that we're discussing here, but it's a starting point, particularly around those areas that are related to diversions from the justice system. And so just as a heads up, we can get a start with that, and it'll help us start to think about and sharpen our notions of what are the important data measures that we need to have, both for diversions from the justice system as well as the process by which people and cases move through the justice system.
I think one of the larger questions, and I'm going to kind of lead into this, us choosing our priorities, is it's up to our subcommittee really to decide what the most useful things we can do with our energy. And we may want to choose 2 or 3 priorities and then have smaller work groups around those, because I certainly heard early on that when we had small work groups, they got a lot done in between the 6 meetings a year of a larger group. So I think what I would hope, and what the chairs, Peter and Heather, are hoping, is that we would come up with what 2 to 3 things we thought were most important for our committee to do. And the only thing I would add to frame that before just opening it up to what people suggest is what I am hearing sitting in the steering committee and on the IPRTF and listening in on the JPOP meetings is that there's a lot of energy to get us started. There's not a lot at this point of rubber meeting the road. And I think people are hoping that the index committee can come up with some specific starting points. For example, if we had a small working group that really met with measures for justice and teased it around and then came up with a recommendation, or if we put a lot of energy into what do we think the most important data parts are and then came up with a recommendation. But I think people are hoping that we can do some of that. What are the best practices? What are the options out there?
But I just, maybe I'll also mention, we have to keep in mind what the county's procurement process is. And, we're not a private sector company that can go out and scan what's available and just start a conversation with one option. We've got to both understand, okay, where's the money going to come from? And then if we're going to spend that amount of money, how do we procure the most appropriate vendor or consultancy firm to do that work? And so I just think it's important as the committee does its work to make sure you're staying in alignment with that county decision-making process, as painful and slow as it sometimes is.
Dean, I was wondering whether, the Village Reach contract better than anybody on this call, I would assume. And I'm just wondering if you could review for us at a pretty high level what it entails and how that might help us shape our work in deciding what we're focusing on in the next 12 months. Would you be able to do that?
Well, I can give it a shot, but I think it might also be a good idea if we should simply ask Jill to send out a copy of the agreement, which it defines the scope of work. Essentially, they are being contracted to do a scan of, what's the information that's available through various systems now within the county. And, Marty and Holly, and you all have done some initial work to do that kind of an inventory of what exists now and what it collects. And then I think a second part of their work is to go through a process of discerning from the various stakeholders, what's the kind of information that you feel would tell you whether the various elements of the Justice Project are being successful, both in the implementation process, simply, are the projects being brought, to fruition as was intended, and also then thinking longer term about what are the kinds of measures of impact and program performance that tell us that the money we've spent on these various elements of the Justice Project implementation plan are accomplishing what we had hoped they would accomplish. But it's going to be a fairly high view, first cut at those kinds of questions. It's a contract for under $40,000, and a certain number of hours that they will be committing to interviews with all the various stakeholders, including the JPOP and the various committees like this one. And so it's sort of it's in a sense, a research project is formative in nature. Does that help? I mean, I think, let's get the contract. Jill, if you're attending, I don't think there's a problem with sending out a copy of the contract and its scope of work, statement of work to the committee members so you can see what it is.
I'm
I
sorry.
definitely have read it. I just kind of wanted to hear your thinking on at a high level what it was going to entail. I wouldn't discourage Jill from sending it out if that's appropriate, though.
I think the
To be
contract is
clear,
less
everyone,
important.
Are you talking
Oh,
about the
for
Village
sure.
Reach contract? Are you talking about the Village Reach contract?
Yes.
Yes, the
Yeah.
new one.
Yeah, I don't have access to that. That I think is being negotiated through the exec's office or the health department.
My understanding is the negotiation is completed. The finance review has been completed, and it's in the exec's office for signature, and then will be sent to the consultant to sign, and we're hoping that'll all happen within the next day or so. And then it's public record anyway, so.
Mhm.
And I see Heather's got her hand up.
This is a really in the weeds question. My understanding is the JAG grant is paying for the Village Reach contract, is that right?
That's correct.
And the Village Reach contract is like 39,000. So will there be room left in that JAG grant? How much was that grant?
Well, I'm not the expert on that, but my recollection is that was under $240,000 grant, but there were several elements to it. There was some software licenses, I think, that
Mhm.
HIA, the Health Information Office in the Health Department, were going to be procuring. And I think it's actually referenced as an attachment to the Village Reach contract. It's in there as an attachment.
The budget of that grant? The
Yes,
full budget? Okay.
the underlying grant, as I understand it.
That'd be good to know what all we're getting out of that JAG. What does JAG stand for again? The Justice.
Justice Assistance.
Justice something, it came out of the Justice Department of the state. And
Well, it's commerce, but it's federal dollars.
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Gloria, can you help us with this, or are you not directly involved? I know for a while you were helping by reporting out kind of the update on it, but I don't know if you've been that directly involved.
I have the JAG grant. I can email it all to you all right now.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Jill.
Peter.
Perry, I know at one time you had a proposed budget for spending some of those funds. Did any of that go forward? Were there any purchases of servers, software, training, etc.?
Yeah, I worked with the executive's office and we scaled it back from like 100 to about 30 for training and things like that. Kayla, I think there were some other places where she wanted to have that money go. And part of this was we talked to the city of Bellingham about Power BI and what infrastructure was needed. And they basically said, you really don't need that level of infrastructure to use that software. So we've done one $2,000 training. I paid for it out of my budget, but I don't know if the timing of it was such that we were able to recognize it in the grant, but we have done one, about $2,500 of training.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have until June next year to expend it.
Got it.
I suspect there is some wiggle room in there for other things if it's a priority.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, Kayla is probably the expert on kind of how that
Mm-hmm.
budget has been revised for as we evolve here.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I wonder if any of you have advice for how best to, Dean, you brought up procurement and such. What would be the right order of events so that we can keep moving ahead? This group in particular can keep moving ahead with research on building out the data system that we need without stumbling along the way. I mean, I went out of my way to find measures for justice, have some conversations. I hope it's been helpful. I understand that a procurement process would require us to go out to different bidders and all, but hopefully we have more information than we had before, and it's been helpful in some way. But I just want to make sure from here that we're taking appropriate steps and in researching what's available, what it is that we need, how to work with Village Reach, and how to move this all forward in a good, sustainable way.
If I could just say, and as a follow-up to the Measures for Justice meeting, I think Peter, as you and Heather and others know, I called the attention, Erica's attention, and Lynette, who heads up the HIA division, called their attention to the discussion that went on during that time, and said that I thought it was important for there to be some conversation that includes at least the leadership here and Kayla and Erica to sort of arrive at a consensus about how do we proceed with not just this Village Reach contract, but the other elements, and to sort of not be working in parallel, but to actually have an integrated conversation about what the next steps are. And that might be the right forum to do what you're talking about.
Okay.
I don't know whether they're planning to call such a meeting. I think there was some indication of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's above my pay grade.
Yeah. I guess are there people on this committee that would be interested if there were to be further discussion around that would be interested in participating? I mean, I think Peter would. How about others of you? Not a lot of, one of the things I have.
What about Caleb?
Yeah, thanks.
Uh-huh.
If
I mean, I
Caleb, par-
know
if
that
Caleb,
all of you are
if
busy.
Caleb
as you can
participates, I'll
imagine.
participate.
Was that you, Perry?
Yeah, if Caleb participates,
Okay.
I'll certainly participate.
All right, well, there you go.
Yeah, I'm just expressing my concerns about bandwidth at this point, but I'm
Well, I know.
definitely interested, so.
Okay, well, I think the members of this committee are really important because of the roles that you play in helping the county kind of get some traction on what's going to move forward. And my goal as a chair is to keep it really efficient for your time so that we don't, that we use your time wisely. I don't know that we can do it without your time because you're all key players. So so I'm back to the priorities.
If I could just, one thing. So
Please.
I'm looking at the measures for justice, and we were talking about procurement. And I see that Thurston County is has procured it.
Yes.
So what we always do is we always see how they procured it. Did they do an RFP that we could piggyback off of? Things like that. Did they sole source it? Because it is a unique software out there.
Okay.
So, we always look to see how others have procured, especially within the
Right.
state of Washington, and that can help us guide it. I do a lot of procurement, as Caleb and Maya know. And so I can certainly help. If you've identified something, I can help look. There's state contracts. I buy things through national clearinghouses.
Okay.
I've done a lot of it, so I can definitely bring that experience to help us out.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Dean.
I agree that that's a very good idea. And you might recall in the Measures for Justice meeting, they mentioned, I forgot how it came up, but I think I had learned that the Justice Counts effort had been, is something that's been taken on by the Administrative Office of the Courts at the state level. And Thurston County has been involved in the project in working with the state on that. And Measures for Justice folks said that, yes, they were involved. They were sort of at a high level, and then I've forgotten which one was which, but I think Thurston County would be a good, just to go and find out what have you done and how has this worked for you?
Also, in my conversation with Eric Ritchie on this topic, he said that he has very good relations and a high respect for the prosecutor in Thurston County, and perhaps maybe a call could be put together with him and that person and some people on the screen, and that would perhaps help move things along. I'd be happy to help put that together.
It sounds like there would be support for doing that as the first step. Okay, so
I'd suggest you have the level setting meeting with Kayla and Erica first.
first, right. And
I mean, you can reach out and find out who the contact are at
right.
Thurston County, but
right. Perry, you had your hand up there.
I'd be very interested in a measures for justice contact at AOC. If we have somebody at AOC. I mean, I'm like in these weekly meetings with AOC for water adjudication and things like that. But I'd
Okay,
be really
I'm out
curious.
of my league. What is AOC?
Oh,
That's,
the state administrative office of the courts.
Got it. That's what you
So-
meant. I'm sorry, I just didn't recognize it by those admission. Okay,
They're the ones that, we use their superior court case management system, we
Right.
use their district court case management systems. I mean, they have our court data.
good.
So it'd be
Good.
really interesting. I'd love to hear how they are progressing.
Good.
I have an
Contact.
email somewhere that's got contacts for that in the AOC, Perry, that I'll try and find and forward to you.
Okay. So it sounds like the action steps that I'm starting to hear. One is first to make sure there is the high level meeting with Kayla and Erica from the health department and others to kind of get people on the same page. The next is to reach out to AOC and see what level of engagement they have with Measures for Justice and how Justice Counts plays in, because I recall from the phone call that Measures for Justice and Justice Counts were somehow related. And then a third possibility would then be to reach out to Thurston County and get further detail on their procurement process and what's happening with that. Am I on track so far? Okay. In terms of who would like to be involved, recognizing how busy you are, do we want to set up a small work group of those of us on this call to be engaged in doing this? And if so, would anyone like to be on it? Peter?
I sent an email to the public defender for Thurston County asking if he had any information about Measures for Justice, if he had any insights. So I
Oh,
could be
good.
looped in to the extent that I'll share any information.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, I don't see this working group meeting a lot as much
Yeah.
as just,
So you can put me
connecting.
on there and I'll
okay,
hopefully, if I get any information, I'll share it.
right? Caleb and Peter, can I assume that you sort of are joining hands and agreeing to some extent within your availability to participate? Is that pushing you
You
too
said
far?
Peter, but I think you were talking to Perry. Is that true?
I meant Perry. Yeah, you got to watch me. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so Perry and
It's
Caleb, you will-
it's really rough the next couple of weeks here at the county, but we're going to a new financial system upgrade, things like that.
I
So-
can promise you this will be after the holiday.
Okay.
No worries. So we've got our own stuff going on. So yeah, but we don't meet again till February, and I think it would be nice if we can get some of these things moving before then, so we have something to report back.
That'd be great.
I'd like to be involved just to keep me in the loop because I'm gonna be coordinating the
Absolutely.
Village Reach contract. Yeah.
Yes, and although Eric Ritchie isn't technically on our group, I think it would be useful to reach out to him and engage him as well. Does that sound good to everybody? Good. Okay. Well, Peter, as chair of, and Heather, have we gotten enough priorities for you to feel like we're doing our work here?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, this is a very specialized group. And as
Right.
you know, our three top priorities for IPRTF, one of the very top ones is data. Everybody agreed, data, data, data. So if we can, if this group can put together priorities within that realm and keep moving forward, meeting to meeting, making real progress, I would be happy. And this seems like we have some action steps here before our February meeting. So if we can accomplish all those things, I would be very satisfied. Heather, how about you?
Yeah, I appreciate all of the work you guys are doing, and I'm looking at those top 3 priorities as well, to create a data dashboard to track key metrics. And I really hope we can have a deep dive with Village Reach about what that scope is going to accomplish and whether or not it is actually going to accomplish what the Justice Implementation Plan set out to do, and how much further we might need to go after Village Reach. And I'm naive to county process, so I appreciate being reined back in, but I also always want to think about like what could happen outside of county process too. And there's so much data even within each department that if we could just, my dream would be like, okay, prosecutor's office, these are the 3 things we want from your case management system every month. Caleb, these are the 3 things we want you to report on every month. Public defenders, can you report on these 3 things? And if we even just had not even data sharing, just each own little siloed department saying, here are the 3 things that make the data meaningful. Because just looking at the daily booking isn't like I can't make meaning out of that, right? I don't see trends in that. You got to like see a whole thing. So that would be my enthusiasm for the opportunity. And also, if not JAG grant, our role as index to IPRTF to council could be a very strong recommendation about, we recommend you fund X dollars to actually get the robust data that we promised the community as part of this justice implementation plan. So.
Okay, well,
The-
thank you.
can I-
I'm looking at the time and we have unfortunately 60 seconds left. I'm assuming there's no other business, or else whoever had the other business has been awfully quiet because so then we need to allow for public comment. Jill, are there others attending
We
that?
do have a couple of attendees. If you'd like to speak to the committee, please virtually raise your hand now. And no hands are raised.
No hands are raised. Okay. Does anyone else have anything they would like to add before we adjourn?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate your engagement, and you will be hearing, those of you on my list, and then we will, our next meeting is in February. Take care. Thank you.